Hello.
Hi. See if I should make my um, video vertical. Let's see. Yeah.
Are you traveling right now?
Yeah, it's my cousin's wedding, and I have to speak in it, give a speech. I'm doing readings during this. It was just like a whole. What?
Are you officiating? Did I recall that from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, with the rabbi. So it's just like speeches and talking about them, which is great. I mean, they're wonderful, but it's a busy weekend.
Very. Oh my gosh.
Everything together.
Oh man.
Like, well, we need to start doing our hair and makeup at 10. Like, wow, that's
That's lovely. Where are you right now in the United States?
I'm in Nassau in the Bahamas.
Oh, okay. There you go. There that is.
I know. I feel very grateful to be here. Unfortunately, I haven't been outside that much yet, but soon.
Yes, very soon. How long will you be there? Just for the wedding and then you leave, or are you going to stay a couple of days? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Back to
For the wedding, back to work. It was wild. Like I'm sure you had this experience getting down here. I had to spend a day traveling to New York, stay overnight in New York, and then spend a day traveling down. And then the flight was delayed getting here, which is why I literally logged in from the Flora baggage claim when we were talking. Because the flight was so delayed. So I was like, well, here I am. So I was sitting on the floor so I could have a plug, and people were stepping over my legs.
Oh my gosh. That's like cinematic. That is.
I feel like with global travel, I just, you become totally fine with whatever, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you log in from anywhere, whatever airport where they have Wi-Fi.
Absolutely. I feel like the Mexico City airport at this point, anyone who works there and night shift knows me because I'm like, I've found my spot where I can go and do something before connect. It's just hilarious.
They probably know to look for you there. They probably always pass by just to see if you're there. So
There's the girl with the blue hair. Cool. Hi.
Hi, missed you. So good to see you.
Sometimes I've got a cat carrier with cats in it. It's ridiculous.
It's so good. 1 second, I just have to.
Yeah, I'm going to try sharing my screen again just for, you don't need to be there. Just, yeah.
Erica, I don't know if you have at the tip of your fingers a bio. I wasn't sure. I was going to do a little bit more of an intro, and I was thinking about whether, but only if it's not stressful to send it. The one benefit of introducing you guys is I can do a little bit more bragging about you. I feel like other people, when people introduce themselves, they'll just be like, I am so and so. But if I get to talk to you about you, then I can brag about you.
It's so funny. I really should. Because I do so many different things and I'm not in a space where I constantly need one. I need to have one, but I don't have one off the top. But I do have, I'll just send you what is posted on the Health and Human Science instructors page,
Oh, perfect.
in case that's useful.
Okay. I tried Google stalking you, but only your ResearchGate and CAP
Yeah, it's
profile.
not really. Let's see.
Not in a creepy way, just, in a bio way.
Oh, that's me every day with anyone I work with. I'm like, who am I actually working with here? What's happening? How did this happen? Hold on.
Hi, sorry to interrupt you. I've just dropped your biography in the chat box. It's the bio that we posted on the website, if you'd like to use that. But just check it if you're not happy with it. But it was the one submitted for our program.
I am sure it's absolutely fine. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's great.
All right, and there, I can't seem to, I was just able to share my screen when I was on, I can't, it says open share menu, but it won't open. Go to the chat.
Can you see the little screen at the bottom that's next to the camera icon?
Yes, it was because I didn't have my screen large enough. It wasn't showing me the full option. Thank you.
That is a problem that I suffer from also.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay.
Are you Megan?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Megan. Megan, it seems like you pop in whenever we have a problem, and I would like you to join my whole life. Like, if I have a problem, I just say, Megan, help, and you come in and save the day.
Well, I have a person that does that for me.
We all need each other. Guys, let's stick together in real life, too.
It's safety in numbers.
Totally. I'm like, oh, I'm having a problem with this. And then Megan will come and swoop in and say, this is how you fix the problem.
I'll do my best. Well,
nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I just wanted to check, is Nopiwe also joining us and also Carrie?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think so.
So we'll just wait until they join and then we can start. But we do still have like 7 minutes.
Okay, I'm also going to send them a note right now, just make sure that they're
Community Health Work.
Okay, this needs to not be in that order. This is interesting. What's happening? Why is it doing that? It should not be in that order. Let's see. Vicki, do you think that where you are, do you have very good connectivity right now? Nope. Okay. I can see your video kind of doing a funky dance.
So I've been doing this about my connectivity all week. So I've been testing all the corners.
Yeah.
Okay. I just emailed Carrie and Nopiwe, so maybe one of them might have a little bit better.
Yeah. So there's one concern that I have is if we run the PowerPoint as a PowerPoint, the trailer doesn't show in the body of the deck. Like it takes you to a new tab and like takes you off of the PowerPoint. So if Megan et al. Need to share the screen for us, if there's a connectivity issue, we just won't be able to show that trailer, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I switched the order of that trailer to be the very last slide. So I don't know if Megan, you're listening in.
The alternative is the trailer that you're talking about. Is it available on YouTube or is it a loose video? Is it on
Yeah,
YouTube?
it's available on YouTube.
So if it's available on YouTube, you can actually just take the link, and when you, I just quickly want to check it, you can send it to me, and then we can drop the link in directly into Sessions. So then you can go through your whole slideshow, and then when you're done, you can just say, we're quickly going to play a little video, and then we can just drop the link in for YouTube.
Okay.
Community health workers or
That was me.
Yeah, I just need to turn. It makes me. I need to turn down my sound. You no longer need your alarm. So.
Okay, so I'm just quickly going to drop off. I just need to refresh my screen in order to activate the YouTube functionality. So just give me a couple of minutes.
Hi, this is Jamie Johnston. I think I got the wrong link. I was meant to. Is anyone in the tech team in here? Hey, Vicky. Hey, Erica.
Hi.
Yeah,
Jason,
at all times, but they're fixing the YouTube right now.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Have you been able to?
I'm supposed to be in a different panel, and I think they sent me your link. I'm the only one in the other panel, so yeah. But
Maybe that's where our people are.
Oh,
I think you can. I think you can log in through the session. No.
I'm logged into my session, but I can't click.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi.
This is the tech team here. You should be able to see on your side when you have the screen open on the side, there says sessions. When you click on that, it should take you out of this, and then you'll see like a load of different sessions.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then you can go into your session.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Let me know if it doesn't work.
Thank you.
I don't know where Erica went.
It did look like her internet was cutting out a bit, so maybe it just went down for a bit.
Are you still there? Is it Megan?
Jamie, you need to click on panel 3.
Panel 3, right? Okay, so I'm just not sure where to do that.
Unless you can find the link for you.
Okay, because I can see my agenda. I can't click on anything there. When I go to the third panel session, I only see the chat and the polls and the Q&A for this specific session.
so Jamie, I saw that Nadine, I believe.
Sorry, Erica, you were cutting out.
Oh, great already. Is Nadine meant to be in your panel as well?
Yeah, but nobody's available this morning. Everybody's traveling this weekend. We thought it was during the week. We had requested a weekday, but I guess because of the condensed schedule. So we have pre-recordings.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was just able to enter your panel.
Oh,
so,
you are? Okay.
When I clicked on sessions, I was able to enter panel 3, which is why I dropped off here.
Oh, okay. Let me go try to figure it out.
Jamie, click sessions on the left. I don't.
I'm not getting any. Okay, she's logging in now.
I'm not sure.
Carrie's logging in, but is she here? It should be. Let's see, participants, people. Oh. Nope, I see Kat. Carrie's here. I just don't see.
Where's no Pew?
Can't get video on. There should be.
Share audio and video, right?
Yeah, the little button on the top right. It should, or depending on how large your screen is, it's where the button appears. I'm going to go ahead and just start sharing my screen.
Carrie said trying that button, but it just resets. Megan, are you able to help here?
Yes, sorry, what were you saying? I was just grabbing Carrie. She's in a different area.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I love it. I have this image of just like someone grabbing you by the shirt and saying, "No, you're over here."
If I could like grab the screen and just drag it into a new session, that would be ideal.
That's fantastic.
You're unmuted.
And Vicki, I mean, I'll mention this when everyone else is here too, but just give me a quick next slide, and I'll just advance. Oh my gosh. Let's see.
See, do we have Carrie able to get her video on now?
And Vicki, right now I'm just seeing the two of us. Is that the same for you?
That's the same for me. I think Carrie's in the session. I'm just not sure if she's able to share her, or if she's logged out. Hello to those who have joined already. We welcome you. We're just trying to get all of our team able to share their video and audio. Megan, are you able to help Carrie get her audio and video working?
Sorry, I am chatting. I just don't type that fast.
Thank you. I think she's clicking the button, but it's not logging her in. Just a hello and welcome to all those who've logged in. Thank you for joining us. We're just having a couple of technical difficulties that we're working through, and then we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Hooray!
Press the same button again and again, and fourth time logging out and back in seemed to work. So thank you, Megan, if you changed my settings. But I'm glad to be here. I'm so sorry for the hiccup there. It worked fine yesterday, and this morning just wasn't triggering. So
glad to get you on board. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are a team of people from the US and from South Africa, and we are delighted to be with you today. Throughout the session, we'll be introducing each one of the panelists, but today we're going to be talking about how digital health education tools can support capacity building efforts for community health workers. Our team at Digital Medic is an initiative of Stanford Center for Health Education. We collaborate with community health organizations to create and evaluate digital health education interventions. So we're an interdisciplinary team of medical experts. We have primarily expertise in maternal and perinatal health, as well as medical education, instructional design, and then we have animators, learning designers, and sort of variety of a team of people who bring that education to life. So I'm Vicki Ward. I am a pediatrician by training. I'm the medical director for Digital Medic, and I will be introducing you to our panelists. Erica, next slide, please. Today, we're going to be talking about why professionalization of community health workers is so important and core to all the work that we do. And Carrie will be introducing sort of why and what the state of community health worker professionalization is globally. And then we'll talk about a couple of case studies. So we'll show you our supporting vaccination toolkit, explain why we created it, show you a little bit of how it was created and what is happening with it. And then we'll talk about advocacy training for CHWs. So this course that we created to help CHWs learn skills in advocacy and storytelling for the purpose of elevating the issues that are important both to them and to the communities in which they work. And then we'll talk about questions that you might have and discuss how we do what we do, but also what is of interest to you all in the audience. So looking forward to getting into that discussion. Erica, next slide. So throughout the panel, we'll talk a little bit about each person. But first, I would love to introduce you to our colleague and collaborator, Carrie Westgate, who is the Deputy Director of Chic, and would love for her to tell you a little bit more about what Chic is and what they do and her role there. Over to you, Carrie.
Great. Thank you so much, Vicki. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to those of you joining us today. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Carrie. I'm here today representing the Community Health Impact Coalition. And we'll go to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and why we are here. I'm going to start with the problem, why we exist as the Community Health Impact Coalition. So next slide. We know that there are millions of community health workers globally. And the fact of the matter is we don't even have a good count of how many there are. The data is old, it's of poor quality, it's inconsistent. So often community health workers are seen as an appendage to the health system. They're volunteers, they're not always counted. So that's where we're starting from. 70% of them tend to be women. And 50% of all community health workers in low and middle income countries are not salaried. And according to some of our own research, that figure is as high as 86% in Africa. We know that community health workers face essential medicine stockouts a third of the time, and that is getting worse. That's just to paint a picture of what we see today. Contrast this against the hundreds of RCTs, the plethora of evidence showing that community health workers, when well-supported and professional, can deliver care and deliver tremendous equity dividends to the patients and communities that they serve. That's why we exist as a Community Health Impact Coalition. We are a team of community health workers and aligned organizations working to make professional community health workers the norm worldwide. And we're pleased to partner with Digital Medic in this fight to make professional community health workers the norm worldwide. And why does this matter? We've laid out some of the statistics, what the current state looks like. And we know that these widespread shortcomings, the fact that community health workers are not consistently paid, they're not supplied, they're not always supervised, they don't always have the training and the skills that they need, ongoing training and skills that they need to deliver quality care, results in high absenteeism. It means that community health workers are often out on the front lines, the first line of care for patients, and they don't have, malaria RDTs, or they don't have something as basic as PPE to prevent the spread of COVID or the spread of pathogens during an epidemic or pandemic period. The ultimate injustice is that despite decades of global health investment in community health worker programs, we are still seeing this issue around the quality of care that's being delivered due to the lack of support that community health workers receive. And that means that, sadly, tragically, in fact, 1 billion people will never see a health worker in their entire lives. So as a coalition, we are about changing that. We are about ensuring community health workers get the skills, the support, the supervision, the salaries that they need and deserve in order to deliver quality care for all. So that's a little bit of the landscape that we're working in today. On the next slide, we lay out some of the practices that we advocate for at the Community Health Impact Coalition. We've boiled down what a professional community health worker is into eight best practices listed here. The first is around accreditation, making sure that knowledge and competencies are assessed prior to a community health worker starting to practice. The second is around accessibility, so removing user fees or any other barriers that prevent patients from accessing care on a timely and equitable basis. The third is proactive. We have seen the impact of community health workers going door to door, looking for sick patients and training patients on those danger signs. And all of this presumes that community health workers are, of course, continuously trained. They're getting the medical education that is available to and required of them to excel in their roles. And I'm really excited that we're going to hear some amazing case studies of how this is happening in practice today. On the right-hand side, you see, we advocate for dedicated supervision, as we would see in just about any other industry. The fact of the matter is that often community health workers, supervision of community health workers is seen as an ancillary responsibility of an already worked nurse at the local health clinic, and she may or may not have the support and the time that she needs in order to provide that care. So we advocate for dedicated supervision and coaching to support community health workers and the teams that they are connected to. 6, paid. We've mentioned this a few times. We saw in the stats, the current state, 86% of community health workers on the African continent are not salaried today. This is really a gross injustice and something that we are advocating to change together. Community health workers should be part of a strong health system and also part of data feedback loops so that the data they're collecting is reported up through the health system. So that's what we're advocating for. This is the solution that we believe can put quality care into, help quality care reach every patient. I'm going to pass it back to Vicki, I believe, so we can move into a couple of case studies around continuous training. So.
Great, thanks, Carrie. I'd now like to introduce you to Erica Tribbett. Erica is a learning experience designer and a public health educator. For the last 13 years, she's worked in academic and community settings to create engaging educational experiences that empower individuals to transform their health and advocate for the health of others. Erica holds a master's degree in public health from the University of California at Berkeley, and she's been part and parcel to developing the toolkit for community health workers and supporting vaccination. So I'd love to turn it over to her so she can introduce you to that course and show you a little bit more about it. Over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Vicki, and thank you, Carrie, for setting the stage. As we know, there are so many things that we can do to try to improve. One of the specific pieces that Carrie pointed out, the key practices for professionalization is the opportunity and requirement to be continuously trained. And I have the privilege of working with an amazing team over at Digital Medic and the Center for Health Education to bring these tools to life. This may be through in-service training, which we'll hear a little bit about in a bit, but also through modular digital means, which is what I wanted to share with you a little bit about today. So we generate materials in partnership with our health workers and with other partners with the aim of building capacity for community health workers in an effective and scalable manner. And one recent example of this work is a toolkit. This was born in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, but has ultimately resulted in a collection of learning tools around vaccination more broadly and communication skills that aid in promoting vaccine acceptance and health promoting behavior in the community. And I'll go on to the next slide, which is the development of this toolkit really is a snapshot right here. It stems from a fundamental understanding that with adequate support and resources, CHWs are uniquely qualified to influence behavior shifts within communities they know and care for. And this quote from one CHW we spoke with captures it quite well. In the face of this pandemic, community health workers are a trusted source of information. They're change agents. But in the environment of the pandemic of swirling misinformation, updated guidelines regularly, and strong emotions in the community, CHWs need the tools to be able to identify trusted information, to rely on a framework for communicating about the complexities of viruses and vaccines, and to connect people with the resources they need at the right time. So in mid-2021, we launched a development of a toolkit for CHWs that's focused on vaccine acceptance. So while CHWs were our primary audience, we also know that training materials are optimized when CHWs can utilize them on the ground when working directly with clients as well. So community members are our secondary audience to consider. Our design challenge is in the context of this COVID-19 pandemic, but also thinking forward to future vaccination efforts, how might we create a flexible, engaging learning experience that helps increase self-efficacy and effectiveness of CHWs in providing vaccine outreach and ultimately contribute to increasing the proportion of the population vaccinated. So we started with listening sessions with our CHW partners at Filani Maternal Child Health and Nutrition Trust in Cape Town, and also One-to-One Children's Fund in the Eastern Cape. And Nopiwe, who will be joining us next, asked about current experience with supporting the vaccine process and with any concerns about discussing vaccination or personal experience with vaccines. Concerns, as you can see outlined here, included, importantly, the strong beliefs around vaccination that often require more than just facts to address. It's helpful to know the ins and outs of viruses and vaccines, but we also have an emotionally charged situation that is based in traditions, beliefs, and values. that are important to address. Additionally, many CHWs felt a lack of clarity about where to turn to for trusted information, as knowledge and recommendations were constantly evolving. Few, if any, had received formal training for this area, despite being relied on as key resources of this information. So in combination with this sort of unstable foundation, CHWs are pulled in many directions and lack the time for training and are managing their own personal experience of COVID-19, vaccination, and related fears. Specific misinformation ranged from concerns about blood clots to effects of vaccines on the older adult population, pregnant women, lactating women, and feelings of invincibility in young adults, and more. So training materials needed to not only provide trusted information in a digestible format, but also build transferable skills in identifying trusted sources of information versus misinformation. They also needed to offer guidance for discussing fears and motivations beyond the facts, often through empathy and storytelling. Recognizing the vaccine acceptance is a spectrum, we needed to help CHWs meet people where they are and thoughtfully guide them through the immunization process. When considering the format, community health workers first mention a strain on time that I just mentioned. The materials need to be modular. We need to have them as accessible in incremental portions, not all viewed at once, with the ability to review in sequence or by topic of interest. They deeply appreciate in-person training, and we hear that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and having questions answered in real time, especially during an evolving situation as the pandemic has shown to be. We'll talk more about an adaptation for in-person experiences with no PWAY, but given the constraints of the pandemic, CHWs also describe a preference for video content that can be revisited, that will not be tossed away as they see happen with many paper materials, that they can share with their clients. Some mention the appeal of a video on a phone that can also help draw attention. So with all of this in mind, we summarize the themes from our listening sessions, and in addition to regular social listening reports in the region and conducting a landscape analysis of existing materials in the area of vaccine acceptance, confidence, addressing misinformation, and communicating about difficult topics related to healthcare. The final toolkit includes 10 animated videos with approximately 100 minutes of content. They're also available as downloadable audio files. Static graphics, available as PNG, PDF, are also available that outline vaccination, common side effects, and how to identify readiness in clients that are also available for download as well. The range of topics address needs related to the COVID-19 pandemic, but again, they're all transferable to vaccination more broadly and to compassionate communication in healthcare. When we're designing all of these tools in all of our projects, we're considering access in our design. And the way that we think about this is in various dimensions. When we use a similar framework to healthcare, we think about, is the content appropriate for this audience? Is it approachable? Are the metaphors, the examples acceptable? How available are the materials? How visible? And how affordable? We rely on our community partners to help us measure ourselves against these criteria throughout the design process. I'm going to zoom in on a couple of examples addressing access in this particular vaccine toolkit. The 10 topics were determined as most appropriate based on the lived experiences of CHWs during the pandemic, as well as statements about vaccine training and interpersonal skills useful in motivating health behaviors. Notably, we also heard that the strain and stress that CHWs experience in their daily lives during this pandemic and in general when providing care were important to address. So self-care in a meaningful way is also included in this toolkit. Another example of approachable content, it relied a lot on the role of our narrator. Sarah is our narrator that guides us through each video. She's living with us in each video, guiding us through the technical aspects of vaccination and side effects, but also leading us through sample interactions with clients and highlighting communication skills in sample interactions. Importantly, she has her own story. She's living with diabetes. She has her own initial fears about vaccination, and she's caring for her nephew during the challenging time of the pandemic. She's managing her own stressors while also supporting the community. In addition to Sarah as our guide, we also see access as approachable, looking like icons that are easily associated with certain concepts and repeated throughout the series of videos. The metaphors help clarify complex topics or communicate the gravity and emotion of a situation. And finally, translation is of utmost importance into native languages. Various languages is a critical part of maintaining that approachability of the content. It's also important for us to consider the sociocultural context. And while we always have an eye towards the transferability to a variety of contexts, the specificity is also important. The types of misinformation, the common beliefs and traditions and experiences are critical to the relatability and usefulness of the material. For example, we heard the need to address the balance between vaccination and traditional healing practices, as well as concerns about targeting older adult populations. And perhaps the most obvious part of access may involve availability. Is the material available? Where can I find it? Is it accessible to me given my constraints in my surrounding environment? Toolkit materials are available on the Digital Medic website or app for download as MP4 video or audio files. They're also available for streaming on YouTube. All content is freely available under the Creative Commons licensing. Infographics are also available for download in various formats for later review by community health workers or use and sharing with clients during and after visits. And these are also shareable via texting platforms such as WhatsApp. So to close, let's take a peek at the approach and the visual from our CHW guide, Sarah. And if I could ask all of our presenters to make sure that they're muted, I'm going to try to share my screen or try to share my video right now.
Community health workers, or CHWs, provide trusted, life-saving care for millions of people around the world. They are deeply connected to their communities and have the power to mobilize millions of people to get vaccinated against COVID-19 and other infectious diseases. But they need the right support and resources. Knowing this, we worked with community health workers to create a free digital vaccine education toolkit that can be accessed worldwide, even in low bandwidth settings. The Supporting Vaccination Toolkit equips community health workers with essential knowledge and empathy-based communication strategies to ease fears and inspire confidence in vaccines, ultimately increasing vaccine acceptance in their communities. Created by Digital Medic, an initiative of the Stanford Center for Health Education, this toolkit contains 10 mobile-friendly videos, as well as audio files and graphics that community health workers can review at their own pace. The toolkit covers the basics of vaccines, immunity, and side effects, and ways to answer common questions and locate reliable information. It emphasizes the importance of exchanging personal stories and exercising self-care while caring for others. Recognizing that vaccine acceptance is a spectrum, this toolkit helps community health workers meet people where they are and guide them through the vaccination process. Access and download the free Supporting Vaccination Toolkit on the Digital Medic website, mobile app, or YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Vicki to introduce our next case study.
Wonderful. Thank you, Erica. It's so fun to see the videos live.
Community health workers, or CHWs.
You can head over to the next slide. Unfortunately, it sounds like Nopiwe is having some trouble with internet. So our colleague Nopiwe Job in our South Africa office won't be able to join us today, but I will be happy to present her slides on her behalf. So our next case study is to talk about advocacy training for CHWs. And this training course really came out of conversation with Carrie and her colleagues at Chic, where they had really identified through their networks that CHWs needed advocacy training, both to be able to work on the problems that are facing them in their professionalization challenges, and also to be able to advocate more broadly for the issues that are facing the families with whom they work. And so out of that, we started conversations about how to build a training course that would be accessible to CHWs worldwide. Next slide. So the first job was to write the curriculum. And so in sort of a collaborative effort, we wrote 4 modules. And the first was to talk about the background of community health systems. what is sort of the history of and the foundational setting for community health worker cadres around the world. And that is about ultimately a 2 to 3 hour session. We then move on to advocacy skills. So what are the steps to advocate for a specific issue? How do you identify what the issue is? How do you build a stakeholder network? How do you elevate the key issues of that problem? How do you talk about the solution? And how do you integrate that solution into the health system in which people are working? And we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that. And then we talk about storytelling. So we know from the research that being able to tell one's own story is a motivating factor for getting people involved in that advocacy issue. So that ends up being about a 4-hour module. And then the use of technology tools. So how do you use Zoom or WhatsApp or other social media tools to both describe and then elevate the issue for which you are advocating? A lot of our CHWs have expressed that learning how to use tools like Zoom have enabled them to talk to each other, to talk to their organizations with whom they work, and then really importantly to be able to participate in sessions like these at global conferences and webinars wherein their voice is really key to be heard. So that is sort of the nuts and bolts of the course. And I think we always take the approach of, one, these courses should be co-developed, both with our community partners, but with CHWs for whom we are sort of targeting as learners, and really want to make sure that we are both integrating them in the development of the course, but then studying what their experience of it is and making sure that the course changes because of their feedback and their experience. And so to that end, we sort of have developed this methodology where we use a design-based research approach and collect qualitative data. So in this study, we included 25 CHWs and CHW supervisors from 8 countries. In the upper right, you'll see the countries from where they came to the session. And they served as our advisors and our collaborators. We collected data over 4 workshops, which were held in 1-month intervals, and that was over a 6-month period, and collected both pre and post surveys and also qualitative data throughout that process. And then ultimately we transcribed all of those recordings and made sure to create a thematic analysis. And then not only did we study those themes that were found, but then used them to make changes to the course so that it was improved over time. Next slide. So here are the sample characteristics of the those that were included as enrollees. Most of the CHWs that were included were between 30 and 40 years of age. About 50% had completed secondary schooling, which we recognized as important both in terms of literacy and engagement with the course. 40%, more than 40% had created some tertiary education. Almost half of the participants had worked as community health workers for about 1 to 4 years, and the other half had worked for 9 to 16 years, so fairly senior CHWs. Almost all of the participants were supervisors, which was also important to really setting the sort of understanding of where those CHWs were coming from, making sure that they also were telling us what they thought was both important and accessible for the CHWs with whom they work. And the participants mainly were working in rural communities. Next slide. So let's get into the theme. So this is what we learned from them about their experience of the course. So the first theme was that CHWs understood the concept of advocacy and clearly perceived themselves as advocates for the health and well-being of their communities. So some of the sort of illustrative comments that people said were, advocacy, I think, means the voice of representing a group or some people, a group working together, but you represent them. I think that's how I understand advocacy. Another CHW's understanding of advocacy was, it means to speak for those that do not have the means and power to speak for themselves. And a third CHW said, it's a work of no promotion, and being that we belong to the community, They feel we are not competent because we talk of health issues and think we're not trained. So that was sort of really motivating for us to try to address that kind of comment. Next slide. The second theme was that there was a moral conflict that CHWs were experiencing between advocating for better pay and empathy for their patients and organizations, which we thought was a really interesting sort of theme to come out of this. So some of the illustrative comments were, we are volunteers and we are for our communities and we've done it for so long and we really love to do it. I can say so. But when we are doing the work, or even when you are walking in the community, walking door to door, there should be something, that can sustain your family. Yeah, we can't open up to talk about money because we're volunteers. It is like the government itself also relies on organizations. So if the organization doesn't have money, then the government doesn't have money. So it's very difficult. Even if we can raise the problem to the government cannot help us because they also rely on us. So you start to see that CHWs were feeling like we are critical to the health response within the country for the government and for the organization. And we have needs, but we are also needed. And I think that was important for us to recognize that this was a pervasive feeling. And going back to what Carrie was talking about with professionalization, that some of this mentality needs to shift, that they are just relied on as volunteers, even though they are so critical to the health response. Next slide. The third theme was that CHWs are the ideal advocates for their own working conditions. Let me say it like this. You know, before we came up with the course, most of the things were hidden to us. We didn't know our roles, what we should be doing, you see? Once, we are voiceless. 2, lack of employment in the countries where we find ourselves. 3, unrecognition. We are unrecognized. Only when they want to make use of us. We are recognized because decision-making, we are not a part. We only implement. We implement after making their decisions, we implement. That's why sometimes they miss the goal because they aren't including us in decision-making. Okay, so far I can say that CHWs themselves should advocate for themselves. Next slide. So after listening and hearing from CHWs over the course of months, we walked them through taking the course on advocacy to really try to understand both how their perceptions of their role and their ability to change the factors that influence their job over time of the course. But then we really got feedback from them on whether they thought that the course resonated with them, whether it accurately reflected their experience as CHWs, and whether they felt like they could see themselves in Sarah and felt comfortable with Sarah talking with them about how to best advocate for themselves and their communities. And because of that, we changed different elements of the course over time. So one CHW said, according to what I was seeing, my views were heard because I was able to see some changes whenever we say, this maybe should be changing to this. Maybe we should edit this. In the next meeting, I would observe that there were some changes. So I would say, yes, my views were heard and it was helpful so that the course will be as it is now. And we found over time that that created not just sort of buy-in and acceptance of the course, but CHWs feeling like this course was their own and this was a course that they created and that they could share with others because they were a part of the creation and they could sort of not only sign off, but really elevate as a course that they've created. And so some of the changes that were made were just sort of both on the audio and the visual side. There were changes to the curriculum and things that were a part of the scripting. And then there were changes to the visuals, the animations. Sarah particularly went through a lot of changes. She was actually named by the CHW community with whom we worked. And then things about how she looked, what her backpack looked like, what her clothing looked like, how she moved, how she talked, were all edited and made sure that they accurately reflected what CHWs wanted to see. Next slide. So now let's move on to distribution. So after this process over time of changing, iterating the course, and talking with CHWs about their experiences, and we don't present here, but a lot of the sort of thematic analysis of how CHWs' perceptions was really remarkable. And I think we will be publishing that soon. But I think the important factors were CHWs really understanding that they were key members of health promotion in the community that deserve to be paid for the work that they do. And also that they could work together with other CHWs to elevate those advocacy goals. So because of the distribution, a WhatsApp channel was created that now has, I think Carrie can correct me, but I think thousands of CHWs are on that WhatsApp channel now and communicate daily about what they're seeing and what they're doing, and connecting about issues that they're addressing together. So when we look at the numbers for distribution, we see that over 2,500 CHWs have taken the course on the Progressive Web app. 425 have taken it through the Digital Medic app, and that's growing. So in combination with an organization called Nama Wellness in Uganda, who through Carrie's work with Chic and through networking, reviewed the course and wanted their cadre of CHWs to take the course. And that has become quite a wonderful story of scalability, where they then got the Ministry of Health to also review the course and decided that all of the CHWs that work with the Ministry of Health should be trained in advocacy. And so the course will now be used for advocacy training for the government-associated CHWs in Uganda. Over time, we have been working to translate into now 3 languages and more to come. And one of the benefits of using digital health education is that we can translate and ideally make some shifts and changes to make sure that it is both acceptable and applicable in many different places. Next slide. I think while we're going to the next slide and sort of wrapping up, I also just wanted to note that the course, similar to the vaccine support toolkit, is freely available, accessible to anybody, and our organizational partners can adapt the course per their needs. They can add their own logo and watermark. And I think as we've worked with more and more organizations, we found that those collaborations are really part and parcel to making sure that distribution is both as broad as possible, but also is acceptable to the organizations with whom they work. I don't care if you wanted to add anything about the advocacy course or the experience of creation and distribution. We'd love to hear any other thoughts you have.
No, Vicki, I think you've covered it really well. I did want to acknowledge the comment in the chat from Hassanatu around hearing from a community health worker. And just looking up, we have some recorded testimony we could have pulled into our presentation today. We do try, the goal of the course, right, is to equip community health workers with advocacy and storytelling skills, and then connect them with opportunities to apply these skills kind of on the global stage. And I will say, we just sponsored one of our leading course advocates, Margaret O'Dara, to go to Berlin just last week for the World Health Summit, where she had the chance to advocate directly to heads of state, first ladies, Dr. Tedros. So she was there. We have sponsored community health workers who have completed this course to be at the UN General Assembly, advocating alongside the Global Fund, the President's Malaria Initiative. So absolutely, Hassanatu, it's so important to hear this community health worker testimony directly. And we were under a little bit of pressure with the timing of this session to hear directly from a CHW today. So we do apologize that you're hearing this secondhand from us. But I just wanted to, thank you, Vicki, for sharing the great, just the great collaboration, the themes that have emerged. I think we're just getting started. It's been just so good to see thousands of community health workers taking up this training. It's freely available. It's in multiple languages. And we've seen this just really kind of unleashing untapped power in civil society to advocate for better working conditions for community health workers so that they can provide better care to their patients. So thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. I'd love to open it up to other questions. Please type in the chat, raise your hand. I think you can just audio in too. So I'd love to hear any questions or feedback. I agree with Carrie Hassanatu. We 100% agree with you. And actually, Carrie has been one of the leading advocates for making CHWs involved in all presentations. And so we fully agree. But please chime in as people are thinking about their questions. I'd love to get started with just asking you, Erica, about the experience of creating the vaccination toolkit and wondering how you thought about the different contexts in which that course would be taken with regard to people's varying sort of sources of myths and misinformation, and how you thought about empowering CHWs to talk about some of those really tricky misinformation issues, knowing that they would vary amongst communities and that this would be in different communities worldwide. I'd love to hear more about that.
A fantastic question, Vicki. Thank you very much. And I think for the toolkit, we wanted to focus on specific areas of misinformation that we were seeing trends in particular areas to getting to that specificity. But to your point, we do want this to be broadly applicable in a variety of communities. And so what we really do is work from frameworks and strategies around empathic communication, around storytelling, around identifying stages of readiness and stages of change, and also really helping folks understand how to communicate and how to connect based on values, how to connect based on beliefs, and how to insert facts, but really focus on that human connection between people. So a lot of our videos are focused on exactly that. The skills, we equip with the knowledge, but then also with the skills that are needed to have these conversations more broadly. And that can be translated by community, but also, again, this is focused on a vaccine toolkit and increasing vaccine acceptance, but we really can apply these communication skills more broadly to other areas of healthcare.
Great, thank you. Carrie, would love to hear from you a little bit more from the perspective of leading the SHE Coalition. And I know that you bring together so many different organizations from around the world to really work together on elevating the important issues for CHWs. How do you think about what are important content areas for us to work together on? I think, as you know, from Digital Medics' perspective, we're always trying to think about what do people need, what gaps could be filled, what are content areas that everybody's articulating a need in but don't necessarily have. How do you think about choosing what content areas might be important to address together, and sort of thinking about how to provide content to the coalition members with whom you work?
Yeah, Vicki, it's another great question. And I think it reflects the coalition's own change journey over the past few years, largely informed by the development of the advocacy course. So when the Community Health Impact Coalition started several years ago, we were an exclusively research and advocacy organization. And there was a question just around how can we continue to engage more community health workers in advocacy and agenda setting for the work that we do together. So we have now moved into kind of a three-pronged model where we've got a third tactic in addition to research and advocacy called Activate. And that is all about mobilizing networks of community health workers to share, what they need, what they want to advocate for together, kind of own this agenda. So coming back to your question around content needs, I think we would look to the community health workers that are part of this community, now several thousand strong, to see what gaps they're noticing, where they would like more training. And I thought the testimony from the vaccination toolkit development was really interesting, just to see kind of how the curriculum was developed. based on some of that feedback, with the advisory model that Digital Medic has employed in both the vaccination toolkit development and the advocacy course itself. So really hearing those content needs from community health workers directly. As a coalition, we are here to amplify that. And then also just to scan our network. So as the Community Health Impact Coalition, we currently have 28 member organizations, close to 75 organizational allies who have signed on, and then several thousand community health workers. So once we hear those initial requests kind of bubbling up from community health workers, or even from members and allies, we then have this really powerful, dense network to go to each other and say, hey, have you developed training on vaccination for community health workers? Here it is. It's open source. Go ahead and adapt it for your needs. So that's where I think the coalition model can be really powerful for some of that. Asking questions to each other and not reinventing the wheel, but seeing what shared assets can we utilize together to strengthen the quality of care, to support community health workers, to professionalize community health workers, and provide really high quality, accessible training, that is designed to build skills and support their patient care. So,
thanks, Carrie. And just to reflect back, I think we've all, I'm sure, across the world experienced so many times of sort of competition and organizations that are all sort of working on similar things in parallel. And I will just say that Chic has been one of the most impressive examples of collaboration that I've seen throughout my career. And I just applaud you all for all the work that you do in bringing people together to work on issues as a team. And I think we see that that's just launched this platform over the last couple of years. So thank you for all the work that you do. I'd love to turn to the audience, and just as people are willing and able to chime in, I'd love to hear more about how you all think about content that you need, education that you want to provide to the groups and the communities with whom you work. And what are the challenges you face, or what are some of the questions that have come up for you? And I'd just love to hear from you all if you're willing to hop in. While people are typing, I'll just address one of the questions that has come up previously, and conversations that we've had is about accessibility. I'll hold that. Well, Hasanatu, are you able to audio?
Can you hear me?
Great. Hi, yes.
Hi, thanks again for holding this panel. I am curious to know a little bit about the content or the educational tools that are out there to help community health workers to really connect with government health departments or ministries or groups, because I feel like a lot of the times when community health workers are working, they want to be recognized, as was mentioned in the presentation, but a lot of that is attached to how government health agencies or groups or departments or ministries are recognizing them. So how do they do that? What are tools and resources that are out there for them to do that? And vice versa. What are the tools that are out there for ministries and health departments to use in order to better connect and recognize and work and engage with community health workers?
Great, thanks. That's a wonderful question. Carrie, do you want to chime in on that?
I can start. Yeah, great question. I think this is really the goal. One of the goals of our Activate work at Chic is to support community health worker networks, right? Mobilize those networks to engage directly in some of that advocacy and work with policymakers on questions that are often very specific to the context in which they work. I think a great example of this, we've seen some of the advocacy course uptake being strongest in Kenya. I don't know if this is coincidental, but Kenya is also where we're seeing probably the greatest upswell right now of community health workers and a self-organizing. For example, there's a community health workers champions network that is focused on activating fellow community health workers to go to their local government officials, to county government, even advocating at national level for fair pay is a big topic right now, given that a lot of the community health workers in Kenya are currently volunteers. That varies by county. So I would say some of that is happening through the course. Then, just supporting community health worker leaders who are taking the skills, the advocacy and a roadmap process that's described in the course. How do you build your coalition? What are some of the tactics you can employ to share your issue with the decision makers? How do you identify those decision makers? So really, supporting and trying to amplify some of the work that's happening to apply those skills in practice. So that's part of the goal of Activate work. It's really just about amplifying kind of some of the work that community health workers are beginning to take on more and more. I mean, we see there's an International Confederation of Midwives, an International Council of Nurses, and then kind of empty, right, for community health workers. And that's often because there's no national association or subnational association. But that we believe is starting to change, or could change, as the dialogue shifts and community health workers start to really critically engage with some of the advocacy concepts and themes, that Vicki presented earlier, that we saw in the course. How do I balance my patient care responsibilities with the fact that I too must pay school fees and put food on the table for my family? So, great question. We're still waiting to see how this shakes out in a few different contexts. So,
thanks, Carrie. Well, we're at time. I'm going to pop in the chat just the organizational websites. Please get in touch. We would love to hear more from you. Please feel free to email us. And we'd love to have you join our team trying to work together for professionalization and support for CHW. So thank you all for joining, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference. Take care all.